Hello, class 12th student. Today I'm going to start chapter 9. Topic is government budget. This is part 1. In this chapter, we are going to cover these topic: meaning of government budget, objective of government budget, component of budget, budget receipt, revenue receipt, capital receipt, budget expenditures and measures of government deficit. So these are the topic that you have to learn in this chapter. This chapter is very important because this chapter is in itself unit also, so obviously it is going to be very important. Okay, so at least 6 marks are 4 to 6 marks is going to be asked from this chapter, and it is not having too much content. So if you are going to prepare this chapter in this way, from this chapter you are able to cover from your paper 4 or 6 marks. Okay, so in this way this chapter is very important for you. And one more thing, there are not too much numerical question. It is just theory chapter. Okay, and it is not too tough. So let us start. Introduction. So if we talk about the present time, so if we talk about economics, so economics main aim is to increase social welfare. Okay, and for increasing the social welfare, government construct these budget. Okay, in these budget actually government decide how it is going to expend on different field or different sector. Okay, and how government is going to earn going to receive the money to fulfill its requirement for the expenditure. Okay, so it is all about government expenditure and government receipt, so that social welfare can be maximized. Okay, in this way what is written in the book: in modern world every government aims maximizing the social welfare of its country. For this it require infrastructure, economic and welfare activities. Okay, and these activity yani infrastructure means providing road, power, electricity, communication facility, education, organizations, institution. Okay, and if you talk about the economic, so we are going to discuss about all manufacturing sector and tertiary sector. Okay, so if there is social and economic infrastructure in the economy, so no doubt there will be progress in the economy. Okay, now but these require huge investment. If you want to construct a road, obviously government have to expend a lot of money, then only it is able to construct a road. So in this way these social and economical expenditure, social economical infrastructural development require a huge expenditure. Okay, these require appropriate planning and policy of the government. The solution of these problem is budget. So budget is actually related to what you want and how you are going to do. Okay, with your limited resources. Okay, a budget is a document containing detailed programs and policies action for the given fiscal year. Remember, budget is always related to the 1 year. Okay, now we are going to discuss it in more detail. Meaning of government budget, so it is very important for 1 marks, so underline it. Meaning of government budget, it is important. It is an annual statement showing an item wise estimate of receipt and expenditure during a fiscal year. Okay, yani it is related to what? It is related to the receipt and expenditure of the government. Okay, during a fiscal year. The receipt and expenditure show in the budget are not actual figure but the estimated value for the economic fiscal year. Fiscal year is taken from 1st April to 31st March. Okay, so Actually, it is not going to represent the actual data. It is all about what the government is going to do the whole year. Okay. Now, important points regarding budget. First is given that budget is prepared by government at all levels, central, state, and local. Prepare its represent respective annual budget. However, we will restrict our studies on the budget of central government known as a union budget. देखो, budget is prepared at every level, state level, national level, local level, but in this chapter we are going to just discuss about the union budget. Okay, yeah, central government budget. Okay, estimated expenditure and receipt are planned as per the objective of the government. In India, budget is presented in the parliament. Remember, such a day as the parliament may direct by convince it presented on the last working day of the February each year. It is required to approved by the parliament before it can be implemented. Okay, so for the approval it is presented before the parliament. Okay, so what is important in this introduction? Meaning of budget. It is what? It is annual statement. It is annual statement of what? Receipt and expenditure. Okay. Now, objective of government budget. Why there is requirement to have this government budget? So first of all, I want to explain it in my own language. Then I am going to explain it in bookish language. Okay. So if I talk about the government budget, if I talk about government budget, okay. So government budget, if I talk. So, in the second chapter in Indian economic development, I had told you about 5-year plan. Remember that long 5 years plans. Okay. So in these 5-year plan, there are plan of modernization, growth, okay, full employment. Okay, so what are the long 5-year plan? So first plan is GDP. Second is full employment. Third is modernization. Fourth is self-reliance. Okay. So actually these are the objective of budget also. So if you forget the appropriate word, whatever written in the book, directly use these. Okay, long 5-year goal. So increase in GDP, equitable distribution. One more thing, 5 is remaining, that is what? Equitable distribution. Okay, to getting full employment, modernization yani upgradation at economical infrastructure, at the level of social outlook. Okay, if we talk about the self-reliance, to dependent on domestic goods. Okay, to increase exports, equitable distribution, so everyone is able to fulfill the basic requirement, and there will be more equitable distribution and social welfare is increased. So remember, if you are going to write objective of government budget, so you have to remember these, recall those 5-year plan and then explain it. Okay, so you have to not learn it separately. Okay, what is written in your book? First is given reallocation of resources. Actually, this is related to equitable distribution of national income. Yeah, equitable distribution. You can write also equitable equitable distribution. Okay, so for equitable distribution, what government does, it imposes taxes on high income group and then provides subsidies to poor people. So in this way there is reallocation of resources, directly purchasing of goods and services. Okay, government itself do the production, are purchased directly from the private and provide it to uh, poor section, like vaccination. Okay, like providing education, providing nurse hospital facility, public distribution system. So these are the example of reallocation of resources, and it is done that everyone is able to fulfill their basic requirement. Okay, next is, ओके स्लाइड आई थिंक ये इधर उधर हो गया, चलिए नेक्स्ट इज इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ. तो ग्रोथ मीन्स व्हाट, वेन एवर द ग्रोथ टर्म विल कम. तो ग्रोथ मीन्स टू थिंग, इंक्रीज इन GDP plus increase in per capita income. So when this condition exists, it is known as a economic growth. So this is the another aim of government budget. Now, reducing regional disparity. Regional disparity means like if you talk about the Bangalore, if you talk about the Gurgaon, if you talk about the Delhi, so these are the metropolitan cities, and the condition, if you compare it with Bihar, UP, so it is good, quite good. So this disparity should be reduced. So that is another aim. Okay. So yani ki growth for all. Okay. This is the another aim. Now, component of budget. If we talk about the government budget and its component, so it is having two part. It is having two part. First is revenue budget, second is capital budget. In revenue budget, there are two part, revenue receipt and revenue expenditure. In capital budget, there is also two part, capital receipt and capital expenditure. What is revenue receipt, revenue budget and capital budget? So revenue budget deals with the revenue aspect of the government budget. On the other hand, it deals with the capital aspect of the government budget. Okay, so we are going to study all these in detail, then we are able to understand. So in simple language, if we talk about the budget, so there are two parts, revenue budget, and second is capital budget. Now further it is divided into two parts, revenue receipt and revenue expenditure. Okay, same way there is two part of capital budget, capital receipt and next is capital expenditure. Okay, in very short, it is related to revenue aspect, it is related to capital aspect. Now what is revenue aspect, what is capital aspect, we are going to study in detail, then we are able to understand. So revenue budget is related to what? It is related to revenue aspect. Revenue aspect of the budget, it is related to capital aspects of the budget. Okay, now here we are going to start with the first one. I had told you revenue budget, capital budget. Okay, so here we are going to discuss about budget receipt. Okay, so we are going to discuss about the receipt. So if we talk about the receipt, the revenue receipt and capital receipt, how? Here you can see कि there is revenue receipt and capital receipt. So that is given there. Okay. So if we only talk about the budget receipt, so it is of two type, revenue receipt and capital receipt. In revenue receipt there are two things, tax revenue, non-tax revenue. If you talk about the capital receipt, there are borrowing, recovery of loan and other receipt. In other receipt there is just saving and small saving. Okay, now let me start with the revenue receipt. What is revenue receipt? देखो, revenue receipt is that receipt that does not, that neither create a liability nor reduces any assets. यानी कि government is going to get money but it is not going to create any liability and not going to receive any assets. So this type of receipt is known as a revenue receipt. If I talk about at your level, so your pocket money, if any guest will come and give you 500 or 1000 rupees, so this is the example of revenue receipt. Why? Because when your father will give you 500 for your pocket expenditure, so this money you have to not return, there is no liability created. Okay, and there is nothing, there is no requirement to sell anything to get this sum. If you talk about borrowing, if you talk about the borrowing, suppose you require immediately 200 rupees, there is some activity in the school and you require 200. Suppose you had taken this 200 from any classmate, so this create liability, you have to pay it. Okay, so this is what, this is not revenue receipt. On the other hand, if you are going, if no one is ready to give you loan, or no one is ready to give you money as a rent, so in that case, what is another thing, you are going to sell any assets. Suppose you are having a phone or you are having any other accessories that you can sell. So suppose you are having a phone, so you are going to sell it in 5000 rupees. So now you are able to get this 5000 rupees. This 5000 is not revenue receipt. Why? Because now your fixed asset had decreases, you have to give up your phone, then you are able to get this 5000 rupees. In the first case, you had taken 200 rupees but you have to pay it back. So in this way, when you are taking loan, it going to create liability. If you are selling something, then you are getting money. So this is what fall in the fixed assets. So this is not going to be your revenue receipt. Revenue receipt, there is no liability in future, there is no decrease in your fixed assets. So if you talk about the country level, so what will be its example? Tax and non-tax receipt. Okay, so let me understand. Okay, revenue receipt refers to those receipts which neither creates any liability nor causes any reduction in the assets of the government. They are regular and recurring in the nature, and government receive them in its normal and courses of activity. याद रखना कि it is only a regular source of income, so it is very very important for the government. And one more thing, कि there is no liability to pay back, and there will be no reduction in the assets of the government. Okay, now what are the example? So tax, like whenever we purchase anything, if you take the example of shampoo, soap, cloth, grocery item, stationery item, anything you buy, you are paying indirect tax. So this indirect tax become income of the government. Same way, if your father is working, so they have to pay income tax. It is the income of the government, and they don't have to pay anything in return. Okay, now another example, if suppose you are riding a bike, you are not having driving license, you are not wearing helmet, so there will be challan, you have to pay penalty. So these penalty money become the sources of income. So in this way, this is considered as a non-tax revenue. Okay, so let me understand in it more detail. So revenue receipt are of two type, tax revenue and non-tax revenue. Okay, tax revenue refers to sum total of receipt from taxes and other duties imposed by the government. Remember, tax revenue is what? It is a compulsory payment. If government has imposed tax, so you have to pay, you cannot deny it. Okay, so it is a compulsory payment. Tax is compulsory payment made by the people and companies to the government without reference to any direct benefit in return. You are paying the tax. If you talk about direct or indirect, you are paying the tax, but you cannot expect anything in return. Okay, it's mean it is going to have two aspects. It is a compulsory payment, no one can refuse to pay it. Second thing, tax receipts are spent by the government for common benefit of the people in the country. A taxpayer cannot expect that tax amount will be used for his direct benefit. Okay, now tax is of two type, direct tax and indirect tax. So let me understand what is direct tax. So direct tax refers to the tax that are imposed on property and income of individual and companies, and are paid directly by them to the government. Okay, so it is imposed on property and income, paid by people, are paid by the company directly to the government. They cannot shift it burden to other. So it's mean that ki the payment of tax is done by the same person, and burden of the tax is also bear by the same person. Okay, so this type of tax are considered as a direct tax. So most favorable example is income tax, corporate tax, wealth tax. Okay, so they are imposed on individual or company. The liability to pay the tax, actually burden of the tax lies on the same person. Its burden cannot shift it to other. They directly affect the income level and purchasing power of the people, help to change the level of aggregate demand in the economy. What are the example? Income tax, corporate tax, interest tax, wealth tax, death duty, capital gain, etc. Okay, now what are indirect tax? So indirect taxes refers to those taxes which affect the income and property of individual and company through their consumption expenditure. They are imposed on goods and services. The liability to pay the tax and actual burden of the tax lie on different person. The burden can shift it. तो सिर्फ इतना आप लिख देते हो ना, तब भी ये उसकी करेक्ट डेफिनेशन हो जाएगी. What do you mean by indirect tax? So the tax which is paid by one person and its burden bear by another person. यानी कि payer can shift its burden to another, yeah, on the consumer. So this is considered as an indirect tax. Now there is only one, GST. Its example is what? Goods and services tax. Okay, so here is given difference between direct tax and indirect tax. Levied on individual company, it is levied on goods and services. burden cannot be shifted. Here burden can be shifted. दे आर जनरली प्रोग्रेसिव इन नेचर, यानी कि आपकी इनकम जितनी ज़्यादा होगी उतनी ज़्यादा आपको टैक्स पे करनी पड़ती है, और एक फिक्स इनकम तक आपको टैक्स देना ही नहीं होता है. ओके, दे आर जनरली प्रोपोर्शनेट इन नेचर. तो प्रोपोर्शनेट होते हैं, आप जितना ज़्यादा परचेज करोगे उतना ज़्यादा आपको टैक्स देना है. ओके, कवरेज, दे हैव लिमिटेड रीच, they do not reach all the section of the economy. If you talk about the indirect tax, so it have wide coverage, and all of us are going to be part of this tax, क्योंकि we are purchasing something and that time we are paying tax. Okay, now non-tax revenue. What are non-tax revenue? So first is interest. So there are many PSU, public sector undertakings. Government receive interest on the loan given to state government, union territory, and private enterprises and general public. Okay, so in this way, this is the income of the government. Next is profit and dividend. Okay, so there are many public sector undertaking. There are some example. Okay, so whatever benefit profit is gained, it become income of the government. Fees refers to the charges imposed by the government to cover cost of recurring the service provided by it, like public interest and fees is paid by those who receive such services. It is a compulsory contribution like a tax, court fees, registration fees, import fees, you give a school fees. So fees are actually when you are using some services, you have to pay these fees. So these fees are what? It become the income of the government. Okay, now license fees. So you are taking driving license, you are taking some other license, so you have to pay fees. So this is also the income of the government. Fine and penalty, whenever you break the rule. Okay, so there are some fine, there will be some penalty, and this become the source of income for government. Now escheat, it is important for 1 marks. It refers to the claim of the government on the property of a person who dies without any लिविंग बिहाइंड एनी लीगल हेयर आर विल, यानी कि कोई भी पर्सन अगर बिना किसी विल के उसकी डेथ हो जाती है तो उसकी जो प्रॉपर्टी होती है ना वो गवर्नमेंट की बन जाती है, तो इट्स बिकम द सोर्स ऑफ इनकम. नेक्स्ट इज गिफ्ट एंड ग्रांट. सो ऑब्वियसली many people gives gift, many people gives grant, businessman. Okay, government get this gift and grant from outside of the country also. It is also source of income, but it is not a regular source of income. Okay, now for fortune. Okay, this is what, so these are in the form of penalty which are imposed by the courts for non-completion of the order or non-fulfillment of contract. Okay, so it is also very important. Spatial assessment, यानी कि 1, 2 and 3, these things you have to keep in mind for 3 and 1 marks. Okay, spatial assessment is मीन्स दैट कि कोई एरिया है, गवर्नमेंट ने वहाँ पे कोई डेवलपिंग प्रोजेक्ट पास कर दिया, जैसे कि वहाँ फ्लाईओवर बना दिया या फिर प्रोजेक्ट पास कर दिया या फिर वहाँ पे रोड कंस्ट्रक्शन का कोई प्रोजेक्ट पास कर दिया, तो ऑब्वियसली जब इस तरह का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट होगा तो वो एरिया का ग्रोथ होना स्टार्ट हो जाएगा, वहाँ की जो लैंड है उसकी प्राइस हाई होने लगेगी, तो गवर्नमेंट ऐसे में उस प्रोजेक्ट की अमाउंट को फुलफ़िल करने के लिए वो कुछ टैक्सेस चार्ज कर देते हैं, तो उसी को स्पेशल असेसमेंट करते हैं. ठीक है, सो व्हाट इज़ रिटेन, इट रेफर्स टू द पेमेंट मेड बाय द ओनर ऑफ दोज प्रॉपर्टी whose value has appreciated due to the development activity of the government. Okay, क्योंकि there are some any project, suppose there is any metro या flyover has passed या construction of the road, so the immediately the price of the land is going to high. So in this case government charges some money, so owner of those property have to pay it because they are going to get benefit from it. Okay, thank you for today.